We go to Senator Mike Lee. Hello, Senator. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thank you very much, Glenn.
I want to give you a couple of headlines. U.S. intercepts 4 Russian warplanes yesterday near Alaska. The next headline, U.S. warns it will defend the Philippines after Chinese laser was shot at their Coast Guard. Let's see here. Norway warns of growing importance of Russian nuclear deterrent. China's President Xi conveyed his support yesterday for Iran during a first visit from the Iranian prime minister. We are not in good shape. Do you and members of the Intelligence Committee have any idea what's going on?
Well, we know some things are going on. We know certain things are happening, but there's a whole lot we don't know. And in particular, there's a whole lot we don't know about the so-called objects brought down by fighter jets firing missiles over the weekend. And that was the focus of yesterday's classified briefing.
Okay, so Mike, we hear balloons. We hear that the Pentagon came out yesterday after your briefing and said, well, you know what? It's nothing. These are probably just commercial balloons. But we have the Canadians sending out the hazmat teams to look for this. And we hear this morning that they are UAPs, which I guess could be balloons, but usually those are, something solid. These were the size of cars. And they weren't balloons. They were metal. Is that true?
Yeah. So first of all, we don't really know what they are. I don't know how they claim now to know what their nature is, whether they're commercial, military, or from some other origin, because they haven't found them. I suspect at this point that they're theorizing on what it might be. That was what was so frustrating yesterday, is they held this classified briefing to tell us about what happened. And they showed up and basically said, we don't know what happened. We had all hoped and expected, based on public statements, that they had covered what was left of these objects and that they were studying them. They haven't found them, at least as of yesterday when they briefed us. They hadn't found them. They still don't really know what they are.
So wait, did they show you video? I don't know what you can and can't say.
No.
Come on, we launched missiles. Yeah. We know we have the video from the cockpits. We know that.
Yeah. We repeatedly asked them about that. Can you show us anything by way of photographic documentation of a video footage, anything like that? They said, we've got some that really isn't useful because the objects are so small, so far away, that the resolution doesn't really do anything for us.
Then why would we shoot them down?
The picture. It's an excellent question. So we shot them down, not knowing what they were, just based on their altitude. We just knew that they were there. But I still can't fathom why it made sense to scramble fighter jets, shoot missiles at them, bring them down when we have no idea what they are.
Okay, so
they're apparently not that concerned about it, or else they'd be frantic, and they're not that.
We found out last night that the United States government had been tracking that Chinese balloon for over a week. Once it was launched from China, we locked onto it and tracked it. Did they tell you that yesterday?
There are things in there that I probably shouldn't repeat from what I know, but it's safe to say that we did know before this thing hit the United States that it was in the air. We were aware of it, and we knew what was happening. And so at that moment, they really should have brought the thing down. And at whatever moment they realized that it was coming into the United States and that it had the ability to collect data, they should have brought it down. We kept hearing last week about the fact that, it wouldn't have been safe to bring it down over the United States. Nonsense.
Bull crap.
Look, even at 60,000 feet, these things don't have a glide capacity. They're balloons. And so if you puncture the balloon, it's going to head straight down. Now, yes, there's a debris field, but there is a lot of space between Alaska, off the coast of Alaska, to be clear, and the rest of the United States, where there are miles and miles around where there are no people. And they should have brought it down. Here's what I think, Glenn. What I suspect is that these were make-up calls. They were compensating this last weekend for what they didn't do the previous week, which was take bold, aggressive action. Only they took the bold, aggressive action, it seems, on the wrong objects at the wrong time.
Are we going to know? Do you think we're ever going to know this?
I certainly hope so. It seems almost unbelievable to me that we shut down 3 of these things over the weekend. We didn't recover any of them. And if there was no immediate threat, as there apparently was, the explanation we've heard is that it entered space where aviation happens. Yeah, okay, fine. That's understandable. Sometimes you need to bring things down. But there was no immediate threat. If that being the case, why couldn't they use a different kind of aircraft?
Right.
One that could observe it up close.
Correct.
Before shooting it down. You can't really do that with a fighter jet traveling at the speed of sound.
I got it. I mean, it is like our government is being run by, Mrs. Hoffelmeyer's 4th grade class. And just the boys, because the girls would be a little smarter. The boys, it's just like, let's blow it up out of the sky. This is crazy talk. There is another possibility here that they are using this, whatever it is, that they are using this to get people off of the Nord Stream pipeline story from Seymour Hersh. And I don't know how much you can talk about it or what you know, but Mike, I find this extraordinarily concerning because there's only a few countries that could do it. None of them really had the incentive, or they would have let us know. If it was another country, would you have gotten a briefing on that, do you think, if they would have told us?
It's hard to say. We don't necessarily get those briefings just because they feel like it. Usually it's because a member is asking or because there's been national news about something and they decide they need to brief all members. I'll tell you, I haven't gotten a briefing on this. I'm trying to get one. All of this, of course, goes back to this report published by journalist Seymour Hersh last week, indicating that, according to his story, there were specialized U.S. Navy teams that planted explosives there and that the United States was responsible. I don't know whether this is true. I'm trying to ascertain whether it's true. But I will say this. We need to approach a near-peer nuclear-armed geopolitical adversary with extreme caution. And so I would like to think that if we were going to do something like this, there would be some sort of clear authorization from Congress. You see, the chief executive, the president of the United States, commander-in-chief and all, doesn't have the ability to take us to war. I don't think it's a stretch to say that doing this, not just to Russia, a nuclear-armed, near-peer geopolitical adversary,
all Europe.
But it's also an attack on France and on Germany that affects a lot of Europe. I would like to think they'd get congressional authorization of some sort before doing that.
Well, he said that there was a way around that because obviously they should have done that if we were involved. I just don't believe that all of the allies, with all of our technology and everything else, we can't figure out, okay, it looks like it's probably these people. I personally, because they're so zipped up about it, it's got to come from the West, and the only ones that can do it really are France or us or Great Britain, and those guys wouldn't do it. But you look at this, Mike, and even if that's not true, can we find out if anything in that report is true, far as that there's these secret SEAL teams that can be trained off the books so Congress doesn't know about it?
Yeah, look, I think there are a lot of details, or at least enough details in the Seymour Hersh piece that this should be fairly amenable to being proven or disproven, because either certain things match up or they don't. It may be easier to disprove than to prove. But I think that can get us a lot of the way there. And yeah, there are others who could have done it. I mean, in theory, it could have been China. Perhaps China wanted to make sure that it had access to more of Russia's natural gas and that it could get it at a lower price. In theory, it could have been China. But and there are a handful of others who it could have been. But this is worrisome to me, Glenn, for the simple reason. Look, I don't know Seymour Hersh. I'm not familiar with any of the facts alleged in his report. But there are a couple of things that worry me. Number one, on February 9th, 2022, President Biden, during a press conference, said that if Russia attacks Ukraine, there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2. The journalist who had asked him the question about what he meant was doing her job and followed up and said, "What do you mean by that? That pipeline's not under our control." And he reassured her, "Believe me, we have the means to do it, and it'll be done. It will not exist."
Well, what?
And so when you couple that with the fact that in this country we have for a long time seen overreaches by the executive to the point where a lot of people just accept now that in the name of a clandestine operation, the United States can effectively wage war without an act of Congress authorizing it. That really does concern me. Not that I am certain that we did this, because I'm certainly not. It's not that I can verify the Hersh article, because I can't. But it's that it really troubles me that I can't immediately rule it out.
And you can't get a briefing on it. All right, hang on just a second, Mike, because when we come back, I want to ask you, do we want to know? Stu and I were talking about this morning, and we were like, the blue pill might be the one to take on this because this is impeachable, maybe worse. It's an act of war. I don't know anybody that's going to fight against Russia if they attack us because we blew up the pipeline. Europe, the world will hate us, and it means war. So I don't know. Do we want to know? And we'll come back with Mike Lee for that answer in a minute. All right, Mike Lee, do we want to know?
Look, I think the American people do deserve to be in charge of their government.
I agree with that.
It is very much a mixed bag because, as you alluded to before the break, the answer to this question, if it turns out that the United States was responsible, has very dire consequences. And I'm not even talking yet about what happens within our government, what the consequences there might be. But does this rise
to more than an impeachable offense?
Quite possibly, yes. I believe it does. Because if you go to such great lengths to engage in an attack, a provocative offensive attack on a near-peer nuclear-armed geopolitical adversary, and you do so in a manner that violates our Constitution, because that's, as I see it anyway, it seems to me like an act of war.
Yeah.
Last I checked, war can't be just declared, just decided by a president. And sure, I know clandestine operations happen. Discrete military strikes are something different than something provocative on this scale that inevitably lead to, and in fact are, war.
So if we would find out that this is even a real possibility, what happens? What do we do? How do we tell our allies? How do we tell Russia so we can kind of, before we say it, say, I'm going to tell you something, but you got to promise not to be mad. We've got to, in that case, we have to promise that you're not going to launch a nuclear strike.
Right.
How do we tell them this?
I don't know. That's part of what makes this such a difficult thing. But one thing I do know is that ignorance is never something that's going to put us in a position of strength.
No.
And I do think it's important that we get answers on this. I would like to know. And And whether we end up finding out or not, whether this thing is buried so far, so deep by the military intelligence industrial complex in Washington that we can't get to it, whether we find out or not, whether we did it or not, I think it's very important for us to have this national conversation.
It is.
Because for decades, we've seen this gradual accretion of power within the executive branch when it comes to the war powers. And increasingly, Glenn, the way wars are fought these days, you don't typically have soldiers lined up on a battlefield in corresponding parallel columns. No, you've got stuff like this. This is war in the 21st century. And so we need to have a national conversation about the fact that today, as at the time of the founding, we need our Congress, the people's representatives, to make the decision about going to war. And clandestine operations need to be reined in to something truly discreet. This one wasn't.
Mike Lee, thank you so much for everything you're doing, and we pray for you, and we'll keep you in our prayers for your safety as you continue to go down this road. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Glenn. Take care.
Bye-bye. Whew. Do you want to know? It's almost as if it did happen and we don't expose it, then we get what we deserve.
Yeah, I mean, of course I want to know, but there's that feeling of, of course, Russia knows. If our media is starting to know, then Russia knows too.
Yeah.
The question is, if it becomes public and it becomes obvious to everybody, then Russia has to respond.
They have
to do something for their own people, and that response, even if it is,
but maybe the people can temper our response to theirs.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, we deserve that.
It's a dark road, though.
It's a very dark road.
Yeah.
Very
look,
dark
the blue
road.
pill was the right one to take.
Yeah.
I mean, he was an idiot. You just take the freaking blue pill and get along like everybody else.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to our channel so you'll be sure to see similar videos from BlazeTV with the added bonus of signaling YouTube that your voice and opinion still matters. And if you're looking for more great conservative content, check out one of the 2 videos suggested here.